Hello and welcome back to Building Your Own Simple Dialogue System, Unity tutorial by me, Thomas Mahon. Thanks for joining me for this fourth video. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Dialog Manager, building dialog states and setting up our answer panel so that we can have answers respond to our state machine and be able to select them from the player. So let's go ahead and dive in. We have a few more things we need to add to the Dialog Manager script. I'm going to go in here. One of the first things I want to do is this current animator is a public variable that we declared earlier. And in our dialog trigger, as soon as we activate, we are telling it which NPC it is we're talking to. And I want to make sure that this is hidden in the inspector. Just in case I were to pass this off to a designer or an artist or somebody else that wanted to take a look at it or wanted to build a level using the system, I want to make it as clear as possible. Anything that's in the editor, I want them to have to actually make that happen, and I don't want, I want to, if it shows up a box here, I want it to be a box that they need to fill in. So by having an extra line in there that you don't need to fill in, just being a public variable, it makes things a little more confusing for designers because, again, they don't know all the code. They don't know everything that goes into it. They just know that they see a box here and they assume that, oh, I need a manager for this one NPC and I'll just make one for each one. And then the whole system crashes and they spent a whole lot of time doing work they didn't need to. So to avoid that, we're using this neat little thing called hide in inspector. It allows me to have a public variable that I don't want to set in the editor. Okay, just another tip and trick for you. Some other things I want to do in here. So we have our dialog triggers, and we're about to make dialog states. And these two objects, I want to reference the dialog manager, but the dialog manager is going to need to then reference our answer panel and our dialog panel itself in order to update those fields and to be the appropriate fields for the question. So when our dialog state tells our dialog manager, hey, here's all of the answers for, here's my 4 answer selections that I need you to show on screen, my dialog manager is then going to have to take that data and just pass it on to the answer panel. And this seems a little redundant and repetitive to not just pass it directly to the answer panel, but by using the dialog manager, I only have one reference, I have one place where it can break, and I use try-catch statements to make sure that if that one spot breaks, I know exactly where it's breaking, and I have one loose spot instead of a whole bunch of loose spots, and I don't have to set anything inside of the editor when I create these dialog states. And so that's really important when you're passing this off to a team of designers, or you're sitting down trying to design the level. You don't want to have to sit there and say, okay, I have one line that my character needs to say, so let me drag and drop 5 different references to make sure that all the code works. This way, we only have one reference, and we're grabbing it in code, and then the dialog manager we can set up once in each scene, and we can even do it in a prefab so that it's already set up as soon as you drag and drop it onto your scene. So that's how we're going to do this. So in the dialog manager, I'm going to need a couple other functions to make this happen. And they're all going to be public. I'm going to have a public void generate answers function. Answers spelled correctly, hopefully. And I'm going to pass into that a string array of answers. All right. And when I do that, I'm actually going to call a script on the answer panel. So I'm just going to set up a couple of functions here, and then we're going to fill them in just a minute. I need a public. Oh yeah. I need an update dialog text function. And then just a minute to double check. I'm a little confused on my notes here. What's the panel added? Oh, right, duh. Okay, so that's really all we need in here. But this needs to be void, and this also needs to take in a string for the dialog text. We'll go ahead and do the dialog text really quick because we already have this reference to the dialog panel here. So for the dialog text, all we need to do is go to the dialog panel dot get component in children. So when we're referencing our dialog panel here, we're referencing this panel, which, if you remember right, when we set up the canvas, it shows up here. Our dialog panel is actually this sort of gray area behind our text. It's not the text itself, and the text is a child of the dialog panel. So what I'm going to do is get component in children of type text. Okay, and I'm going to hit Control Period in Visual Studio and do Unity Engine using UnityEngine.ui. Control Period in Visual Studio is a really handy way to fix your code in ways that Visual Studio can figure out. Like, for example, it knows that text is an object, but it's inside the namespace of UnityEngine.ui. So it found it in there and then recommends, hey, why don't you just use this using statement, and then you can just use this how you're trying to. So that's pretty handy. But if you're using MonoDevelop, I don't think it has as many handy tools. So just type in Unity Engine using UnityEngine.ui. That gives you access to this text class here that you'll find in the Children of the Dialog panel. And then this has a component called text, which is your actual written text. And we want to set that equal to s, this string that we just passed in from the dialog text, because this function is going to be called from the dialog state. And when we enter the new state, we're going to update the dialog string sorry, by passing in what it's supposed to be. Now, generate answers is also going to be called from the dialog state. However, it's going to pass this function just pretty much directly on to our answer panel. So we need to create a new script here. Scripts folder. And create a new script called capital T answer panel. Okay, and I'm going to put this onto my answer panel, which, if you remember, is a child object of the dialog panel, which is a child object of the canvas. So our answer panel here needs to have its script. And we'll go ahead and open that as well. Load. And for our answer panel, what we need to do is we need to have a public function called add answers. And that's going to take in a string array of answers. And in order to use this, I should have done ahead of time, was we need to have a game object array called answer objects. And I want to make this a serialized field so that I can set it in the editor. And all I'm going to do with this is my answer objects. Oh yeah, that's a void function. That's why it's red. My answer objects are really my answer buttons. So I've got my answer panel here, and inside of that, I have 4 answers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock my answer panel to the inspector by using this little lock button here. In general, anytime I push this button, I make sure to unlock it again immediately, because once it's locked, I could be working on my dialog panel, and this is actually a great example. You see here that I have a vertical layout group, and it has these settings or whatever, and then I have my dialog panel, and if you're not really paying attention, you'd notice that there's not too much difference here when it's unlocked. You go to the answer panel. I might not notice that this vertical layout group is missing, and I might be trying to move something around or make a change to just this object, to just the dialog panel object, but I don't realize that my inspector is locked on the answer panel. So good practice, if you're going to lock it, unlock it like right away. But for this implementation, we'll go ahead and lock it, and we see our answer objects array right here. Right now it's size set to 0. That's fine because it'll automatically populate. We're going to grab our answer objects here, our answer buttons, and we're just going to click and drag right over here to the answer objects word. Drag it on, and bam, now we have a reference to all 4 of our answer buttons. Now, it's also important to keep in mind that this is not the text of the buttons. These 4 buttons are just that, buttons. You'll notice that they should have a button script on them. But this is locked, and I just did it again. Okay. So you'll see the 4 answers over here. They each have button scripts, but they don't have text. The text is actually a separate object that then has a component called text that sets the actual text of button. We can change this to whatever we want, and we can see that it changes in the editor in real time. So we have references to the 4 answers. We just want to remember that we don't have the text objects, we have the answers themselves. So when we add answers into the function, we're going to go through each one of these answer objects. Game object, answer object, or answer button, and answer objects. So no matter how big that array is set, it's going to go through each and every one of them. Actually, for stability's sake, let's make it a for loop, and let's do answer objects. I is equal to 0, I is less than answer objects.length, then I++. The length of excuse me. The length of your answer objects array here is going to be however many variables you have in this array. So so right now we have 4 objects in that array. So my answer objects.length returns a value of 4. Now there's no index 4. Like if we said answer object sub 4, that doesn't make any sense because it has 0 through 3 is how it numbers them. So fun thing to remember is that less than length gives you the right sorting. So what we want to do is answer object sub I dot get component in children. We want to grab that text item again, and a control period to use Unity Engine.ui. And then we want to change the text component, and we want that to equal answers sub I. Okay. Now, hopefully, well, actually, I'm going to do this the other way around. I'm pretty sure this is how I had it set up before, but I just realized that I want to do this the other way around. I actually want to sort through the answers themselves and get the length of that array that I'm passing through this function, because that way if I only have 2 answers or 3 answers, I only have 2 or 3 things in this array. Because this array that's being passed in here is probably coming from a variable sized array, right? I'm not going to demand that it have 4 answers, be them blank or not. So instead, I'm going to go through however many answers I have and set them appropriately. Okay. Similarly, I want another public function, void remove answers. And this one's not going to take any input variables, but all it's going to do is go through answer objects.lang, and we're going to say answer objects of I.get component in children text dot text is equal to a blank string. That way there's still something in it. We don't want to completely delete them because we just want to edit what the string contains. That way we're not creating new strings and deleting them, and we'll be working with garbage collection the whole time because that can make a lot of issues. So to avoid that, we're just putting in empty strings. And then we need another function, public void catch answers. Catch answer. So this function I'm actually going to use in the buttons themselves. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. But the way we're going to do this is I'm going to say string answer name is equal to the answer plus ID, right? And then we're going to do, let me double check how I did this before. Oh, right. So what I'm going to do now is find my dialog manager again, and then I'm going to get that get component tutorial dialog manager, and in there I'm going to get the current animator. So remember we set that variable equal current animator is holding whatever NPC it is that is currently talking. Okay, so I'm going to get the current animator, and then inside of that animator, I'm going to get the component, or inside of that game object, I'm going to get the component animator. And then in there, I want to set bool by the name of answer name, and I want to set it to true. So what I'm doing is determining there are 4 answers, right? And they are each going to be set up with the name answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, answer 4, answer plus its ID number, right? And then we want to set that bool in the animator that's the current game object that's being spoken to by Dialog Manager, and we want to set that answer to true. Okay, so the way that we set that up is in the editor. We go to our answer, right? And for answer 1, we want to do a function on the answer panel. So kind of slow things down here. So in the button script, we have an onClick function down here. And that just says, whenever I click on this button, I want to do stuff. But what do I want to do? I want to talk to the answer panel. This is the object I want to interact with, is the answer panel. And I want to activate a specific function in tutorial answer panel component. I want to catch this answer. And this is answer 1, right? So answer 2, we've got the answer panel again. And I'm going to catch the answer. That's answer 2. And answer 3. I know there's faster ways to do this, but there's only 4 of them, so bear with me for just a second. I did it the other way, whatever. answer panel, catch answer 4. Alright, now what we're going to do with each one of those, so we caught the answer and we're telling our animator, which is our empty animator here, that these answers are true. So we want to add answer 1. I'm going to go ahead and, well, I'm going to go ahead and be real lazy and just copy the word answer. I'm going to add another one, bool, answer 2, bool, answer 3, bool, answer 4. Okay. Yeah, we're only going to need one more, but we'll do it later when it matters for inventory. Okay. So that is our 4 answers that we can set to true and false. Okay. The next thing we're going to need generate answers. So this generate answers function in our dialog manager, let's go ahead and update that. All we want to do is just call this add answers function in the answer panel. That's all. But we want to have a serialized field of the type took answer panel. We're going to call this answer panel. Okay, and answer panel dot add answers. And we're going to pass this string array called answers. All right, and they're named the same thing, which is kind of weird when you look at it, because this is taking a parameter called answers and we're passing a parameter called answers. And whatever. I'll make it a little easier to read, I think. If you name them the same thing, sometimes it looks for that colon, because you can type answers colon answers, or answers colon A, and that actually sets the parameter answers directly to it. Sure, I'll just leave it in there for now. Moving on. What we need to do next, we've got the update dialog string, we've got everything set up on this end, so all we need to do next is create the dialog states. So I'm going to create a new C# script called dialog state. Alright, actually no, I'm going to delete that because I did that wrong. I'm going to create a new, I thought it was in here, no? No, I could have sworn it was in here. Animated override controller? No, that's not it. There is a way to get, or at least there used to be a way to get a specific state machine layout that had some default stuff in it, but I'm not seeing it in here. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a C# script dialog state. So in our dialog state here, this is actually going to derive from state machine behavior. And that didn't do it either. Okay. So what we're going to do for our state machine behavior, I know there's a template somewhere, so we're going to go look for the template here. And I'm not going to find it, of course. That's fine. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to grab the template off of my old dialog state. I know there's a way to get it to automatically do this, but I'm just going to copy all of this because I don't want to forget any of these parameters and have it not work on it. So, why are you yelling at me already? Oh, that's why. Okay, shut your face. Alright, so we're going to create a function called OnStateEnter, which is a default. Yeah, OnStateMachineEnter. So OnStateEnter passes in some parameters. The animator that's currently controlling the state machine, so this animator or state machine, whatever, that's actually controlling this state that this state sort of exists inside of is referenced here. And then the state info is what state it's currently in, or info about the next state, or any information like that. We won't really be using that. And you also have the layer index, which tells you which layer. Like remember we looked earlier at our animator having layers in case enemies pissed you off, or you made NPCs angry, then you can sort of do that thing, that sort of thing. Is it still showing my error? No. Good. Okay. I hate errors. Drives me nuts. So OnStateEnter, what we want to do is we first want to set all of my answers to false. All right. So we have a reference to the animator, and on the animator itself is our parameters. Our answer is here. So we want to go through each one of these and make sure that they're set to false, because we want to use this dialog state script on every single dialog state. So I'm going to put it here. So there'll be a tut dialog state here. And then I'm going to create another state. That's fine. And this is also going to have my tutorial dialog state. And then we're going to have a transition from this one to this one, which will be something like answer 1 is true. Right? So they both have the same state. So when we exit this state, it's because one of these booleans checked to true. So when we enter a new state, we just want to make sure that they're all false. So we want to start off at I equals 1. And is less than 5. And the reason we're going to do 1 and 5 is because if we look at our parameters here, our first parameter, parameter 0, is conversating. In this one, we really don't want to touch too much, because when we turn it off, it's going to disable the whole dialog system and start over. So we just want to reference answers 1 through 4 and make sure that they're false. So we want to go through parameters 1, 2, 3, and 4 and make sure that they're all set to false. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to make a string answer name, and that's equal to answer plus I. Because answer 1, answer 2, answer 3, answer 4 will all put the correct name in. So then we need the animator set bool. Nope, that's set a bool, not a phone location. And that's answer name. And we want to set them all to false. That's the first thing we want to do. Just to make sure everything is kosher. Alright, and then we want to get a reference to Dialog Manager. So where we're going to do this, again, is the tutorial Dialog Manager. We'll call it Dialog Manager. We'll just declare it, and then we'll do dialog manager equals, well, actually, we'll make sure we do this in a try-catch statement. Dialog manager dot, nope, is equal to GameObject.find dialog manager dot get component tutorial dialog manager. Okay, and if that doesn't work, we're going to throw a new system.exception that says scene must contain an object called dialog manager with a dialog manager component attached. So that gives us some clarity as to what our error is, and we don't just get the generic, hey, I'm broken. Because nobody likes to see that. It makes everybody feel bad. Okay, here's our exception. This one, this formatting's annoying. Alright, I always put my try-catch statements on a single line like this. It's just easier, especially when they're only ever one line anyway. So why put them on 4 lines or 6 lines or whatever it is? It's just a waste. Okay, so now that I have a reference to my dialog manager, hopefully, I'm gonna update my dialog text, and I'm gonna send into that my dialog text. Now my dialog text, as well as my answer text, are going to be set in serialized fields for each state, because each state has different dialogue. That's why we're making it a state, is because it says something and then it asks you for 4 different answers, or up to 4 different answers. So for each one, you want to set your own dialogue as you set it up in the state machine. So we're going to make some serialized fields. Serialized field string, and we're going to call this dialog text, just for what that text is. And then we're going to make a string array called answers. Alright? So in our update dialog text, we want to pass in dialog text. Boom. And then dialog manager dot what was it? Generate answers. And this is my answers array. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And then when we exit, on-state exit here, what we want to do is make sure, we'll go ahead and call the base deconstructor, and then we'll say dialog manager. No. Okay, so we're gonna grab all of these and redo this reference again as we exit, so that we can then say dialog manager dot remove answers. It should be. Oh, is that not in here? Where did I put that? Remove answers is in the answer panel. Right. So in the dialog manager, I'm going to go ahead and make remove answers. And all that's going to do is talk to the answer panel and tell it to remove the answers. So the dialog manager doesn't have the resources needed to do that. So in our in our state here, our remove answer function now works just fine. let's see here. That should be it. So let's wait for our serialized fields. Here we go. Our dialog text is going to be, hello there. I seem to be working. And for our answers, we're going to grab 4 answers. And they're going to be yes, no, what, and exit. Alright, now the reason I make the final answer exit, because at any given time, if answer 4 is ever true, I want to exit the program. So I'm going to make a new state, and I'm going to call it, just like I did before, I'm going to call it goodbye. Okay, and from any state, I want to make a transition to goodbye. And that's just when answer 4 is true. Now remember, has exit time, and the exit time is 0, and the duration is 0. Remember that, like I said in the very first video, the reason we're doing this transition this way is because this is working as a state machine and not as an animator. This animator is a very powerful state machine, but it's designed and built to run animations. So it has transitions between, like this would be my idle and my walk, and then I'd have another one that would be run and jump and steal stuff and stab and all that stuff. And they have transition times, and this transition time allows it to blend from one animation to another and be able to go from idle to walk and not just all of a sudden stutter step and you're now walking, you're now at walking speed. With this transition, you can sort of blend the two of them and allow it to be a more seamless transition between two animations. Now, when we're using a dialogue system, we absolutely do not want that gap to be there. Or if we do, we want to know exactly what it is and use it accordingly. So by making these numbers 0, we've made it so that there is no time between when this transition exits, or this state exits, and this state opens. So when I'm exiting this system, this state, what I'm doing is removing all of the answers, which, if you remember, it's actually on the answer panel. I'm filling it in with blank, with nothing. I'm just removing it to nothing. And then, as soon as I open the next state, I'm filling in those answers with the new answer names. Right? Setting these to false, and then I'm generating the answers with the new answer names. Which then goes to here, add answers, passing it further along, and then I can add the answers here, and actually get those texts updated, specifically to what the answer texts actually are in the dialog state. It just seems to work a whole lot better that way. If you have an issue where your text doesn't show up at all, or it shows up for a second and then it goes away, make sure you check these transitions and make sure they're all set to 0. And like I mentioned at the beginning, and I'll mention it again, and hopefully at least one more time, if you're using Unity 5.4 or older, you want to change these numbers. Your exit time, you want to be 0.9, and your transition duration, you want to be 0.1. I know it's weird, and it doesn't make any sense why 0.9 and 0.1 would work, but after tinkering with it for a really long time, I discovered that this worked. And then when I updated this system to Unity 5.6 just the other day, everything broke and nothing worked. So I had to change these numbers back to 0, and now it works. And that's the way that it intuitively makes sense, that you wouldn't have a transition between dialogue statements and changing a UI canvas. That doesn't make any sense. So this makes more sense. It seems to work a little better. Anyway, there's my rant. Make sure those numbers are 0. Always, 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 always. Okay. So we have a transition from hello, where I say, I seem to be working, yes. And then I've got a new dialog state here, and I'm going to say, wow, it really works. And that's going to be my answer 1. I like to do these left to right. I've got answer 1, because then I'm going to have answer 2, I'm going to have answer 3, I'm going to have answer 4. I kind of want to be able to see all of them, like sort of all at once. Like, I know I'm picky, but whatever. Let's see, if we just go to this one, we call this yes, we call this one no, and then we'll call this one what, and this one, actually we don't need, never mind, we don't need condition answer 4, because we're better than that. We already set this up, any state, answer 4 is true, goodbye. How handy, how nice. Alright, and I like to make a transition from goodbye back to hello. That just sort of happens. Remember, keep these at 0 or you'll break everything. But that just goes back to the initial state. That way, if you're talking to someone and you accidentally hit goodbye, or you hit goodbye or whatever, and you want to go back and talk to them again, it just pops up immediately. It seems more intuitive, in my opinion, as a player, that, you know, if I'm in front of somebody and I want to talk to them, I shouldn't have to, like, move away 3 feet and then, like, come back. I find that really distracting, and it just sort of ruins your immersion as a player. You always try to keep that immersion layer there. So anyway, our hello, we've got an answer yes. Let's make another transition to the answer no. And we're going to fix these. And this is going to be answer 2 is true. And I'm going to make another transition. Remember to 0 these. Again, 0 these. Unity older than 5.4, 0.9.1. Remember that. It's very handy. If you don't, it will be awful. So this says, wow, it really works. This is going to say, look, it worked anyway. We'll go ahead and continue to do 4, and for answer 1, I'm just going to have it be go back. I tend to do that a lot. Seems pretty intuitive. People like to navigate around dialogue and omnidirectional and not be restricted. So if answer 1 is true again, that's where we go. Well, we can always put answer 4 as exit. Grab this, make it 4, make this exit, and make this a go back as well. Just zero that out. That's answer 1, answer 1. Make a transition here, coming back, like that. Answer 1, make that. Say, how is this confusing? 4, go back. I'll leave these on 2 for now, and exit. Just to kind of show that we can dialogue, it can be done. So let's give this a whirl, see how we're working here. Go ahead and deactivate the dialog panel for starters, and alright, so far so good. Hello there, I seem to be working. Oh no, I have an object reference not set up. What did I forget? Dialog manager. Oh yeah, that's right. I need a reference to the answer panel. Boop. There we go, and I'll go ahead and turn this on. because yeah, because that serialized field isn't really going to like it being off right away. It's not a big fan. Okay, hello there, it seems to be working. Yes. Wow, look at that. And we can go back. Cool. No. And these buttons don't work, right? I don't do anything. Cool. And we can go back. And say what? And we can go back. And we can exit at any given time. Uh-oh. Alright, we got a couple things we need to fix here. For example, my exit here isn't really doing what I want it to do. Oh, that's right. It's because I'm forgetting the next script. How are we on time? We are pretty long. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut it here again. So what we did this time around was we finished up the dialog manager. We got references to the dialog panel, the answer panel. We added the rest of the dialog manager scripts in here. Added a couple of public functions here. We built the tutorial dialog state using our OnStateEnter. We have references to dialog text and answers that are exposed in the editor, so that we can just build inside of the editor to build all of these dialog states. We also fixed the answer panel so that we can add all the answers and then we can catch the answers to do the appropriate functions we set up in the state machine to respond appropriately. We haven't finished the trigger yet. Coming up in our next tutorial, which hopefully is the last one, I think it's going to be, we're going to do onTriggerExit, which is the inverse of onTriggerEnter, and we're going to talk about turning the system back off, and what all we have to check and make sure that it's in place before we do that. Looks like the dialog manager is pretty well finished up. Our answer panel's done. Our dialog states are done. But we need to make sure that our onTriggerExit works, and we're going to need the closing dialog state. Just to have one final state that executes a couple lines of code, wrapping up a nice bow and making sure that when we re-enter, we're not going to have any issues. And like you can see, we have some weird stuff happening as we run our game now. As we trigger enter, and then we leave, and it stays on. Or we exit randomly and it just sort of goes away. It doesn't seem to really be loading that new state at the beginning. So we're going to take a deeper dive into all that stuff coming up in the next section. See you then.